and other officials with an update that we are still looking for person of interest, suspect.
Suspect now they are calling him. It said person of interest, suspect,
Same
all
thing
one
is
and
what
the
they're
same.
saying,
Now,
yeah.
what they did do is release a photo that was taken this morning, is what they told us, in the city of Minneapolis. This is of, they believe, Vance Boelter, the suspect now.
There it is
in
with the
this
cowboy
case.
hat,
right?
and the
so
blue jeans.
They believe he is still in the Twin Cities area, but they also they think he's working to flee this area. They say they've been in contact when asked if they had been in contact with the TSA. The head of the BCA said that they've been in contact with all federal authorities that are relating to this investigation in this case. They also confirmed that they are looking at 2 other locations, one of them in North Minneapolis, the other, the one that we've showed you, Belter's home down in Green Isle, but these are all related to the investigation.
Our Adam Duxter asked an interesting question about the knowledge, tactics, sophistication of this suspect because of his involvement with a security company in his background. And what we basically heard was, yes, that is something they're taking into consideration, that his level of planning and also understanding, or even his use of weapon, his history in that is something that they are taking into consideration. This is a look at the vehicle that the suspect used. That you can see it looks like any other law enforcement vehicle. You can see the lights, you can see the markings on it, would make anyone
the
think
grill
that,
on the
yeah,
front.
make you think that that's official law enforcement. And this was some video that our photojournalists and Maria Lizignoli got earlier this afternoon as that vehicle was removed, because obviously they'll be combing through that for additional evidence. But I think the big headline here is that this suspect is still on the run right now, considered armed and dangerous. They are looking for the public's help with any small piece of information. We believe he is armed. He should not be approached. Call 911 if you do believe you see him or saw him at any point today, because that can help with figuring out some of the timeline of where he's been since this morning. We do know that along with that cowboy hat, he was carrying a bag. We don't know what necessarily was in that, if it was additional weapons and ammunition or what. But the other thing I think that we heard from the Brooklyn Park mayor is that it's really important right now to be looking for valid information from valid sources, because they've already noticed misinformation that is out there. I'm guessing a lot of that coming from social media, as is typically the case, because that's not vetted. And that the fact is that this was an attempt to instill fear in everyone here in Minnesota.
Right. Let's go out to our Adam Duxter. He is at the Emergency Operations Center, so he was just in person there as they were giving us all of this updates. Adam, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Heather, we knew and were reporting the name and age of Vance Boelter before this press conference, but what we did learn that I find particularly interesting and will be a cause for concern for many people who are watching is that the security photo that the folks shared with us here today at the Emergency Operations Center was snapped or taken from a Minneapolis-based business this morning. He's wearing entirely different clothes. He's in an entirely different city. And again, the folks we heard from say he's working to actively flee the area. And we know, we've been watching all morning, that local, state, federal law enforcement had essentially a barricade around those neighborhoods right near where this could have happened early this morning and overnight. And effectively, this tells us he was able to get out of that area, right? This photo taken in Minneapolis showing him in that cowboy hat, in that dark long sleeve colored shirt or coat, again with light pants and a dark bag. So he is no longer in that area. And again, Drew Evans from the BCA saying they have reason to believe he's actively working to flee right now. Again, they talked in this press conference about being in touch with TSA, being in touch with any sort of, folks who could spot him trying to get out of town. We do know they've been near his home, southwest of the cities, to try and, again, establish that as another possible location he could go to. just incredibly frustrating, I'm sure, for these law enforcement officers who, as we've seen, have been going door to door, literally, in this neighborhood, trying to find him this morning and all morning. Again, this photo that they shared, taken from a Minneapolis business this morning, that's all state investigators would be able to share with us. Again, they say if you see him, call 911. You have every reason to believe that he is armed, and you have every reason to believe that he is dangerous. And again, they shared that he could possibly be working with the help of others. They called him a suspect, a person of interest. Drew Evans from the BCA said they're one and the same to us at this point. And the last fascinating thing that we learned is that there is reason to believe at this point that they could have known each other, meaning Melissa Hortman and Vance Boelter could have known each other. We do know that Boelter was appointed in a government role, more or less, and the BCA says they're working. They say there could have been overlap with meetings at this point, so incredibly personal, we're learning here just within the last 20 minutes or so. But again, guys, the big thing, they are asking people to either call that tip line they've set up. Again, we've got the number right here. I'm sure we could get on the screen. That's 877-996-6222. Or they say if you see this guy, call 911 right away, because they do think he is armed and dangerous at this point. But again, the big thing, he is, they have every reason to believe potentially not in that area anymore, because that photo, that surveillance photo, entirely different clothing, taken this morning in the city of Minneapolis.
All right, Adam Duxter here. And Adam, it's important to note here that they believe he's no longer in the area, as you just mentioned. Brooklyn Park PD telling us that there's no longer a need for people in this neighborhood to shelter in place. They say the suspect is not in custody, and again, reason to believe that they are no longer in that area. So we'll continue to check back in with Adam. Part of this press conference was describing what this suspect, Vance Boelter, looks like, so that you, the public, can call in with any tips, even the smallest that you don't even think would make a difference. They want to hear from you because they do believe Boelter is leaving the area. So let's take you to a clip from the head of the BCA, Drew Evans, describing this suspect.
Today we are asking for the public's help at this point in time in locating Vance Luther Boelter, who is a 57-year-old white male who's 6 feet 1 inch tall, 220 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. I know this name has been reported in the media so far, and we are confirming as a person of interest that we are looking to locate in relation to this. At this time, we would ask the public, if you do locate him or see him, to call 911. Do not approach him. You should consider him armed and dangerous, and you should call 911 immediately with the information. He was seen last this morning wearing light-colored cowboy hat that you can see up here in the clothing there, with dark-colored long-sleeve collared shirt or coat, light pants, and carrying a dark bag. If you have any tips about the whereabouts or any information that would be helpful, you can call local police department, or you can call our BCA tip line at 877-996-6222. or email us at bca.tips@state.mn.us.
Again, that's the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the head of it, Drew Evans, there describing Vance Boelter, the suspect that they are looking for in the shooting deaths of Mark and Melissa Hortman there. That picture, that description that he has, that is taken from this morning. So after the shootings occurred, we know that's from a business. Change of clothes. A change of clothes. That's from a business in Minneapolis. And law enforcement does believe that he is now on the run and trying to get out of the Twin Cities area. Let's show you this picture one more time here. You see the cowboy hat, the dark jacket, the light-colored pants. He was holding some sort of dark bag. Law enforcement say that they have been in touch with all federal authorities. They were asked if they were in touch with TCA, and they said they're in touch with everyone that they need to be to. They need to about this investigation here.
And you really have a couple of locations now where they're looking for additional clues into where he may have gone next. That includes his home in Green Isle. We showed you, this is a look at that home from earlier earlier this afternoon as crews went there to try to find any pieces of evidence that might help them figure out where he might be going next, if that part of it was planned or not. And then also that North Minneapolis location where we showed you that surveillance photo from this morning, really letting us know that he could be anywhere. I mean, it's been several hours, so depending on where he was headed next, or we still don't know if he had anyone that might be able to assist him in his fleeing from the area.
Right. They're asking people not to approach him if you see him, but directly call 911. We also have that tip line that we have been mentioning throughout the morning. BCA asking for your help. If you see him, if you know anything about him. Another thing, and that tip line, we read it off once again to you, 877-996-6222. Another thing that was mentioned in the press conference, which we haven't touched on quite yet, there has been no update on Senator Hoffman or his wife. We know that they were shot in their home in Champlin about 2 o'clock this morning. The update that we did have was that he was out of surgery in stable condition, but as Drew Evans said, he did have significant injuries there. So again, no update on his condition except that he is out of surgery and in stable condition.
And we know that all of these law enforcement agencies have been working closely together, and I would assume that we might hear other local agencies joining in now that we know that that last location was in the Minneapolis area. And if there are pieces of information nuggets that they're holding right now as to maybe some of the information or ideas of where he may have been headed next, I think that's going to be really key over the next several hours.
Right, and we know local law enforcement clearly working on this, but not just in Brooklyn Park and in Champlin. We heard from the mayor of Minneapolis that he has police officers here in Minneapolis assisting with this investigation. So they are at that area in North Minneapolis, whether it's the business or it's a home in that spot there. But you have to imagine that local law enforcement and state and county law enforcement are quite stretched today. I mean, they had hundreds of officers out there in that perimeter. That perimeter has since been widened now, or at least they're asking people they no longer need to shelter in place. But we know that the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, she had directed the FBI to make this a priority. So we have FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals, a lot of law enforcement from at all levels working on this case.
This is a look at the vehicle that the suspect left when he ran. You know, the reports were that he basically ran out the back door after the second shooting, and that vehicle obviously was then taken into custody. They're doing a thorough search of that vehicle. But if a vehicle like that were to show up at your house at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're fast asleep, you wake up, you see even the flashing lights, everything about it, and then an officer walking up to your front door, you're probably a little groggy. I think anyone would assume that it's law enforcement there to help you in a moment of need because there's some sort of situation going on.
You also have to remember that is what police encountered when they first went to the Hortman residence, that they saw this vehicle here, maybe making the assumption that someone had already beat them to go check in on Representative Hortman and her husband.
And that was at about 3:35 this morning
so
that second incident took place.
Dark outside. One of the things, though, that the head of the BCA reminded people was that it is premature right now to talk about any motive. He says they have so many of their agents and their officers going through paperwork and doing this kind of investigation. He says right now it's very fluid, so they're all working very hard to figure out what might be behind this, but it's still way too early to come to any conclusion.
But luckily they have every resource at their disposal right now.
Derek, you brought something else up that I thought was important to revisit, and that is what the Brooklyn Park mayor said about misinformation. We're already starting to see misinformation coming in online, and he reminded people that it's important to distinguish from what you're seeing online and from what is coming out from the official sources.